Why are you holding yourself back like 50 years from now on a problem you're having today? What you believe can come true, but it has to start with a daydream. Wallowing in inaction, waiting for the perfect moment is probably where most people waste most of their life. I don't ask God to fix my problems. I ask God to show me the way. We dream as far as the limits of our current reality will allow us to. Go through the fire and come out as someone else.
The pitfalls, failures of life are actually your amulets of strength.
If everyone else in the world makes fun of me, but I help one person, then I win. One of the most important things that has helped me.
Nick Klingensmith, it's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you as well.
What's the biggest thing that people get wrong about mental endurance?
They think that mental toughness is given to them, or they're born with it, or that just because you've had bad stuff happen to you makes you mentally tough. I think the biggest misconception is that you can be a victim and call yourself resilient. But the X factor is you have to go through it to get through it. You can't just be victimized. You have to do something with it. You have to seek a transformation. You have to find a way to actually go through the fire to overcome what's happened to you. And that's how you build mental resilience. And it doesn't always have to be about the same thing in my background too. I was thinking about it this morning. I post those daily videos every day. And today I posted about fog and uncertainty because it was really foggy out. But the other theme in my head was about we need to train and practice adversity. We can actually develop grit. And it's not always about going out and running an ultra or taking a series of ice baths or just doing a whole bunch of miserable stuff. Sometimes it's just a 5-minute walk. Sometimes it's simply delaying that extra cookie. Sometimes it's just doing something hard or doing something uncomfortable for 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 5 feet more than you were doing it before. And every time we do that, every time we go through the fire, every time we intentionally make ourselves uncomfortable, we build that resilience. You don't go backwards. You don't get less resilient. So we develop those skills and traits, and over time, we get tougher.
So the victim mindset, is that like when something is triggering in someone that's trying to show them the path that they need to overcome? It's like almost like the thought that bubbles up to the surface, and either you shy away from it or you attack it head on.
Let me give you this on the victim mindset, because I'm going to tell you what most people I talk to, and this was true for me. All right. Anything I tell you right now is an experience that I had to go through. So oftentimes I feel like I'm generalizing and maybe speaking for other people, but it's my own set of lenses. I think a lot of us wallow in the victim mentality, and we are unwilling to admit it to ourselves. And I get it. There's some ego involved. Nobody wants to admit that they've been victimized. At the same time, we lean into it and we use it as an excuse. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I love using this as an example. It's real easy to say, you know what? I've been victimized by the world. I'm a diabetic. I can't do this. I have this problem. Wah, poor me. It was not my choice to be a diabetic. I did not choose to be victimized by diabetes, just like you don't choose to be victimized by getting held up at the ATM machine, right? What happens after that? Do I make excuses for myself? I can't do this because of diabetes. Oh, my life sucks because of diabetes. Oh, it's not fair because I have diabetes. That's victim talk. The same way where if I got robbed at an ATM, not my fault, I am a victim. But a year from now, if I'm still whining, I can't go out because I was victimized. No, I don't. I have money for that because I was victimized. What's the point? I'm going to get robbed. That's a victim mentality. That's when we decide and we make a conscious decision to wallow in our own bullshit. But then we create lies about it. I think the biggest misconception that you were asking about earlier is that the difference between resentment and resilience. Just because you're mad doesn't make you tough.
It's like getting robbed at the ATM or coming down with some health crisis. It's to your point, like you either can resent it and let that build up and snowball into its own energy momentum that then percolates and robs you of your attention throughout the day, throughout weeks, throughout months. Or you can choose like you're proposing, it sounds like the resilient side, like, hey, because of this, well, now I'm going to become better. I'm, going to watch my back when I'm going to an ATM, or I might find a better solution to deposit or withdraw money. Or, hey, this health thing happened. You know what? I'm going to find a blessing. This is going to make me a harder, tougher person. I'm going to fight and become a better version of myself, regardless of a negative circumstance that I had no control over that impacted me. Am I wrong, or
No, you hit the nail on the head, because
where else am I missing?
you hit the nail on the head, because it comes down to a decision. And so, to give a little bit of background, I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover fatality car accidents, all on the same side. So I'm like a walking Jenga board.
What?
Got sleep apnea, nerve damage. I almost died from meningitis. Terrorists once put a nerve gas bomb on my airplane. It's not relevant, but I like to drop it in there for, shock effect. And when I discovered obstacle course racing 8 years ago, the sheer fact of waking up early to work out, adding intention to my life, prioritizing myself, prioritizing my health, adding good habits, and good habits are a gateway drug. So all these things were just adding to my life, making me feel better about myself. And that's when I had that second car accident. About 7 months after I just started changing my life, it was threatened to all be taken away. And so I remember I was literally lying on the couch and I was sad and just feeling sorry for myself. And I wanted to give up, right? And I'm like, none of it was real. What's the point? Wah, wah, poor me. My boss was giving me some crap about something. I was like, he doesn't know what he's going through. I, it's weird because you want sympathy, but you don't. It's like you want everybody to know, but you don't ever want everybody to treat you that way. I wanted to feel special because I was sad. And so you get up and you start going to work and you take showers and you eat food and you walk the dog and you meet your responsibilities. So even though you want to give up, you're still taking these steps, right? And so I put another race on the calendar and I was training for it, but I was so flat. I wasn't passionate at all. Like I couldn't really get into it. And I was having this conversation with myself and I was listening to a YouTube compilation of other motivational speakers. And they're going back and forth like, are you a victim or are you a survivor? Victim or survivor? And I'm like, it's the fucking difference. I realized in that moment that despite all I had gone through and even the changes I made in my life, that I was still playing the victim. I thought, again, because I was overcoming things, I was becoming resilient instead of resentful. I didn't see that I was still playing this victim mindset. And so I threw a glorified temper tantrum, and this was it. This was a decision for my life. And I said, you know what? I am going to live my best life every single day so I can stick the middle finger up to cancer. All right. I'm going to do shit that diabetics should not do so that I can show them that we have no limitations. I'm going to help other alcoholics recover because that's how I stay sober. I will not be defined by my circumstances, but rather my triumph over them. And it's a decision. And since then, it literally is like a game to me now. You give me the next hardship and I tell you how I'm going to overcome it. I hurt my leg my hamstring in a Spartan race. I'm like, great. Now I get to learn how to overcome a hamstring injury. We got Hurricane City down here in October last year, 2 hurricanes in 2 weeks. And we're like, all right, well, I guess we get to learn how to survive this now. Whatever it is that we're going through, it's just the next iteration of what I get to go through. And that was it, though. So you hit the nail on the head because you simply have to first accept your attitude. You have to accept this is what I'm doing. I am the problem. I am what's holding me back. And I don't want to anymore.
Wow. It's almost like Jocko Willink, the like good. And I love the mantra you just shared, which is like, good, I get to learn this now. So whenever something happens negative in your life, is that now your like affirmed action, your internal compass, your instant response?
Well, my instant response is probably about the same as everybody else's, which is to wallow in it. So I'll give an example. I was in 2023. All right. I had literally left my job 3 weeks before, and the timing of leaving my job was not my choice. So you can tell that my ego was already a little like this, right? And I was traveling for a Spartan race, and it was an ultra 31-mile race in Dallas, Texas. And I needed a win. I just needed something to boost my confidence. And that's what I love about these events. They always come at the right time. You jump that fire, you cross that finish line, and you're just like, you have this renewed sense of confidence in your ability to tackle things. And so I was like, all right, let's go. And it was October. It was like my last probably big race of the year, and I'm grinding through. I'm 12 miles in, and I was like, hell yeah, dude, I am on pace for what I want. I am eyeballing a top 10 finish. And then I felt a severe pain in my hamstring on one of the obstacles, and it was a really bad strain. I thought I tore it, and I had to take the penalty loop, which when you fail an obstacle in Spartan Race, you have to do a penalty loop anywhere, probably about a quarter mile, maybe a little bit less, some harder than others. It took me about 25 minutes to do it. And people were coming up alongside me, offering me salt packs, and I'm like, it's not cramps, shut up. And then they're offering me like, hey, you want us to get medical? I'm like, I walked in, I'll walk out. But by the time I got to the next medical station, I had to hitch a ride out. I was like, I'm done, I can't. And that night, I went right to the airport, went to the hotel, got my stuff, went to the airport, and there was only two people in the world I wanted to talk to, because there was only two people I knew that were just going to let me be mad. Everyone else can try to make you feel better. I didn't want to feel better. I was pissed, right? I have an injury. I'm tired. I just spent a lot of money to get to DNF a race. Now I have to, I'm going to have to cancel other things. This really just screwed everything up that I was planning on. And I didn't want to feel better. I wanted to be mad about it. I wanted to say, poor me. This sucks. Screw the universe. That's the process
Mm.
for one day. I didn't set the timeline. I didn't say, I'm going to allow myself to be mad for one day. That's just how long it takes. Because the next day, I say, all right, how are we going to tackle this? What are we going to do? Because again, I was a victim. I was a victim of bad luck. All right. Like
Mhm.
something bad happened to me. Okay. I'm allowed to be mad about it for a day. You shouldn't pretend that you're not. Like, if you're upset, if you're sad, if you're angry, you're frustrated, it's okay. You should feel these emotions for a minute. But I'm not going to choose to stay there. And that's what happens the next day is I say, what am I going to do about it now? So I hop on YouTube, say, I start describing my symptoms to AI. I look for videos on how to rehab it. I talk to people who know how to do it. And then I just have to make it what I call accepting your starting line. Because then I had to look. I had the world's toughest mudder 2 weeks after that as a 24-hour obstacle course race. I couldn't walk. I wasn't going to be able to do it. Right. So I had to accept, hey, this quarter is over. This year is done. Now let's start looking at building for the next one. Letting go of those expectations, letting go of the demands that I put on the universe is one of the things that allow us to move forward. I think one of the reasons that we can get stuck in that victim mentality is we're holding on to this idea that we have control over the events around us.
It's our ego's desire to, I guess, have the ideal life, to the comforts, right? To be able to enjoy the comforts, to avoid the dangers, the pitfalls, the accidents, to avoid the pain. And so if we can't do that, and life is a kind of never-ending string of events, many outside of our, our conscious control over things like you said that can happen, then you have these like powerful timelines that shift, right? What you just were mentioning is you're trying to now say, wow, okay, I've got this long multi-day, week, a month, a long multi-month cycle that I might not be able to do my next race, and I'll have to adjust my perspective. And so now you're taking this like, good, I can learn something from this. What can I do instead of preparing for the next Tough Mudder or the next Savage Race or the next obstacle course? And then that's what drew you to creating content.
Well, where I started actually the obstacle course stuff race comes all through all of it. I started sharing content when I first started doing this stuff, and it was mostly on like Facebook and written content. I used to call it Facebook therapy because I'd put these kind of, again, I think me against the world is the rally cry of the victim mindset, but I didn't know that yet. And so I would talk trash against the things that hold me back. And I didn't realize at the time though that, basically I was writing a book because half the little blurbs I put in social media ended up in this book. And then a lot of it was just this self-talk. So when I started doing videos about 2 years ago, I knew I wanted to be a speaker, but I was uncomfortable talking to camera. So I started doing the videos. Again, put yourself in adversity, right? Like overcome the thing, do what's hard. The 15 to 30-second videos just to get me more comfortable talking to camera. And what I realized along the way, I was trying to find my voice initially, right? And so of course I've been watching people like Goggins and, other like Jocko, right? And I'm just kind of like yelling at the camera, like giving this sort of motivational pep talk, but it wasn't me yet. It was when I had a bad day. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I had a bad day. and I shared about it. And I opened up about being afraid. And it was when I let that vulnerability out there that, and the comments started coming in, and people were like thanking me for just sharing, like, hey, I'm really scared about this and blah, blah, blah. And like life happens. And what I realized is that number one, I already knew I wasn't unique. I don't think I am. I think that my problems are the same problems that other people have, and I take solace in that. Who wants to be the unique guy because he's so jacked up? So, if anything, it makes me realize that I am not alone. And then when I put that out there, it helps others to realize they're not alone. And so once you start finding your voice, for me, it just became continued content. And all I do, I mean, even in the conversations I have with people, which is I network a lot, we talk about things that affect them in their daily personal and professional lives. So the brain is always spinning. I'm always learning things. I'm always putting myself into challenging situations. I'm always putting myself into things that I'm afraid of. I mean, not for nothing, as a speaker, I have a conference I'm going to be speaking at in about 2 weeks. It's a speech I've been delivering about 12 to 15 times in this past year. I've continued to evolve. I continue to practice. And I guarantee you, for about an hour and a half before I get on stage, my heart is going to be like this. And I tell you what, I hope 10 years from now, I hope I still get that. It should always be
Mm.
important. I don't want to be asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's like even doing some of the virtual videos, I can attest that there's like a little bit of butterflies right before you do it. Anything that you are going to be viewed at by a large number, I guess it's like the primal tribe trigger, right? We don't want to be rejected by our peers, let alone a mass of people. And so what are things that you're doing when you're preparing for a speech like this that you've done now over and over again? How do you reinterpret what's happening?
So, what's interesting is I published my book Through the Fire in 2021, which is the story of, I told you, the 4-time cancer survivor, became an obstacle course racer. And a lot of the speech tells my story. So, it's a 300 and something page book that I tell in about 35 minutes. And, but so I'm speaking for at a conference in 12 days out in Jacksonville for a sales conference for a transportation company. And the same speech essentially that I gave at a different transportation company in October. However, they have different themes. They experience a lot of the same things, but there's a different theme for the year. Also, it's been 4 months since the last one. So yesterday I sat down and I start going through the crux of it, which is basically my speech is my story, which is that of victim to victor. And then, of course, the relevant life and personal professional lessons that can apply to the audience and whatnot. And so yesterday I just started going through it again. And I'm thinking about the people I'm talking to. So I'm reading the speech that I've already wrote. It's memorized. I don't need to read it. I don't even need to write it, but I'm doing it anyway because I don't know. I figure that's what a professional should do. And, but in it, I'm thinking about the people that I'm speaking to. How can I word this thing differently so it applies to them more? How can I make sure it resonates with the people that I'm talking to? Because again, I don't think I'm unique. I think I'm relatable. I think that's what makes my story powerful is that just an average guy. I don't win races. One of the reasons I like having the virtual background, not just because it shows all the medals and it's badass, although it does and it is. Um, none of them say first place. None of them say first place. That's my that is my chosen path of controlled adversity, of personal challenge, because it's not just a physical challenge. Physical endurance training is mental endurance training. We have to figure out how to overcome obstacles, actual obstacles, climbing an 8-foot wall, swinging from something, climbing something, carrying heavy objects, climbing up a mountain when I live in Florida, training, with an injury, all these different things. The process for overcoming an obstacle is the same, whether it's one of those physical obstacles, a job loss, home loss, like all the things that we face, the process of overcoming it is still the same. And so it's a great way to continuously practice that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, overcoming the fear of public speaking and the preparation that you put in. I hear this idea of it's all about repetitions. Like when you're doing something new, and I think just to anyone listening, here's a conference speaker that's done this. You said 12 times, over 12 times, gotten in front of people, still gets anxious, nervous, the heart pounding in the chest before you do it. And you're still practicing and rehearsing and writing your speech And then doing the improv, right? Of, hey, let me imagine a new audience. And I loved how you said the goal is just relatability. I think one of the secrets in communication and connecting with people is to not try to, like, I guess, be yourself or be so pompous or try to think something about you're doing, but instead just relate and try to connect with who you're talking to, with your audience, and then let that kind of guide your intuition to help craft the message that's meant for that moment.
Yeah, for me, and you're right. If it's about, it's not about necessarily focusing on being myself, but it is about being authentic and finding the best way to deliver your message so it's heard. I think this is something that when I was a leader in sales, I could have done better at. I was more focused on you needed to hear me instead of how I needed to change my approach so that you could hear me. I think there's some ego in there, right? Sometimes a little bit of power, sometimes some frustration. Sometimes you look at one of your reps who has an attitude and you assume the rest of them do. Like there's these things that just stand in the way of you being at your best. But when you focus on the other person, how can I help them? That means you have to worry about the way that you say things so that they can be heard. I've already dropped a few swears on this, and I'm very comfortable with the F bombs. But I know that I'm not Goggins. I know if I go into some place and I just start some F bomb laden tirade, I'm going to lose some of my audience. Not everybody is as comfortable with that as I am. And so, even though that's authentically me, well, that's great. But if I want to be a professional speaker, I need to make sure my audience can hear what I'm saying too. And so, those are some of the adjustments that you do need to make. And, I think one of the most important things that has helped me is I'm not afraid of failure. I'm actually not the least bit afraid of the negative things somebody will say about me at all. When I get trolled on my social media channels, I love it. And I don't get off on it. Like, I'm not like Goggins who's like, yeah, screw the haters. I appreciate it because honestly, a click is a click and the algorithms don't know the difference. And the people who need to hear my message don't give a shit what the troll has to say. So it only helps me. I had one video I posted on Facebook a while back. It got like 1.5 million views because a bunch of people just kept trolling me, and I kept responding, "Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment." And it just took off. So also knowing this, and this is the biggest differentiator for me, and I would say anybody who has some stuff to go through, I have my purpose. I know my why. I am extraordinarily fortunate because I found my life purpose. I don't think most people get to do that. But if you understand even the purpose of what you're doing, why you're doing it right now, that can transcend those other things. My purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too, which means none of that says as long as they like me. That's not part of my purpose. If everyone else in the world makes fun of me, but I help one person, then I win. So you just have to be willing to accept that and it's not a popularity contest.
I love that purpose to overcome any obstacle and inspire other people to do the same.
When I wrote my book, the first one, Through the Fire, I was I was in a moment where I was looking at the totality of everything that happened to me, all the stuff I talked about, plus a lot of personal loss, my sister, my mom, like my cat, my dog, like all these things that just, again, life happens, but and I'm like, man, when is this stuff gonna stop? And I'm like, it's not. It's not. Life doesn't discriminate. It's gonna keep happening, man. Like I am simply meant for a long, hard climb. This is the path I'm on. And when I accepted that in that moment, I'm like, this is actually what gives me a chance to fulfill like a greater purpose. I've always wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I wanted to feel like I was serving some sort of a purpose. And I'm like, this is my chance. This is the opportunity I'm given. I actually was talking to a friend of mine last night, somebody who I didn't even mean to. Like, I reached out a few weeks ago because I hadn't talked to him in a while. Apparently, I caught him at the right time. He shared a lot of personal stuff. I shared some insight. We were talking last night about how grateful he was, and he's like, you really just never know the people that you're impacting and the people that you're reaching. And I told him straight up, I'm grateful for all the bad shit that ever happened to me, and I mean it. I'm grateful for it. Like, thank God for cancer. Thank God for diabetes. Thank God for all these things. Thank God for my past as an alcoholic and all these other things, because without that, I don't have what I have now. I'm still a victim. I'm resentful, and I don't have the same tools and ability to help people the way that I do now. And it's given me a life. It's given me a purpose. It's the little nuances that usually derail people throughout the course of the day. They bounce right off me because you realize how insignificant they are.
I love that. That's so powerful. So the hardships that you're going through, when you look back, right? Hindsight is 2020. You will feel empowered if you can shorten the time window from months, years or months to a day or less when something derails you, and to continuously find more of an upward spiral of momentum. And the hardships and the turmoil, the pitfalls, the failures of life are actually your amulets of strength when you look back.
Absolutely. I'm a perfect example of this because, and I call it my immaturity. Also, maybe because I almost died a lot, or maybe because I grew up on an island where we only had about 8 weeks of life before everything turned into a ghost town again. But my relationship with time has been, I don't like to wait. I'm not a patient man, and you have to be, because I'm 45 years old right now, and though tomorrow is not guaranteed, I got at least 20 more years of this, assuming that I will live at least 20 more years of this. So when I'm like worried, oh man, I didn't get that gig, or, what am I going to do? How am I going to make all this money? How am I going to do this? How am I going to reach these people? Wow, look at that speaker. How am I going to build up to this? And how am I going to get videos like that? Where are you at today? I'm doing what I need to do today. I don't need to get it all done at once. I simply need to do the building blocks or the foundation that's important today. I need to take the actions that are available to me today. I mean, there are some things, when I like in endurance sports, like there are some races and opportunities and events that I essentially may age out of, but not many of them. And again, I'm not going to win one of these things. So there's always going to be a personal opportunity for me to overcome something in there. And so, again, that's what I had to get over, because when I hurt my hamstring that day, I'm like, it could have been like, my life is over. I can't do the race I want. Or, well, I guess I'm just going to have to do it next year. And I did that world's toughest mudder event that I was unable to do because I got hurt. I did it this year and got hurt. but, but I did it.
You're like, well, good. I can learn to overcome this too.
That's it, man. Working on it right now.
Dude, you are a man of iron, I gotta say, from all the shit that you've been through. How has your connection, or do you have a relationship with God, like through this journey of life? How would you describe that? Do you have a relationship?
I do. I'm a spiritual guy, not a religious guy. I have a relationship with a higher power that I call God that is probably very similar and close to everyone else's God. I don't play by anybody else's rules though, and I believe I'm on a spiritual path. And as someone in recovery, that's important to me. It's important to know that, number one, there's a higher power, and I'm not it. That part's really important. And something about I have come to believe that God wants me to be happy. Oh, that's the other thing too. When I talk about the time frame, right? Scoreboard. You're gonna make it through this shit, 100%. And the reason I know this is because you made it through everything else. You were undefeated up until this moment. All right, Nick 1000, universe 0, because you're still standing. We're still talking about it. So every time we're faced with this other thing, God got me through the last time. God can get me through the next time. I'm just going to ask for faith, for direction, and keep trying to take those steps that are available to me. And that's all. My relationship with God is I don't ask God to fix my problems. I ask God to show me the way.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's, however you describe it, higher power, and you can choose forms of prayer. You can meditate. You can kind of just talk with this higher power. You can. There's many different religions out there, so you can kind of go down one of those paths with all the different kind of traditions and rituals and mantras. But I imagine, especially in forms of hardship or when you're at your lowest low, that there's like almost like a call out to this higher power to be like, hey, like, can you like help or like find a way to guide me through overcoming this obstacle? So you don't have to just do it yourself with like just, your ego or your self identity, that maybe there's a bigger power out there that you can trust on or you can lean into and look for strength, especially in a challenging moment.
especially when, like you just said, you don't have to do it all by yourself. And that was something that, when you talk about resentment and resilience, right? People who have gone through things and tend to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder are also probably pretty good at overpowering other people to get what we want. For me, that was a skill I developed. Somebody at the end of an 800 number tells me it can't be done. I'm like, oh, here we go. Let's get it done. I loved being able to get impossible things done. But eventually I had to ask myself, at what cost? A lot of the times I kill myself emotionally trying to get my own way when tomorrow would have been just fine. And so when I am going through some of these like life challenges, financial challenges, health challenges, things that are so far beyond our control, outside the scope of our understanding, even that's when that is when I ask. And I have all the evidence of God in my life and the fact that I haven't had to pick up a drink in 10 and a half years. And July 12th of 2014, I had just been thrown out of a Las Vegas hotel for trying to fuck a hooker in a broom closet while my girlfriend slept down the hall. I was supposed to be the speaker at our conference the next day, and I was trespassed. I wasn't allowed back. So I could have lost my job, could have lost my girlfriend, could have lost my friends, could have lost my life. All I had left was a sliver of, like, I don't know, I wouldn't even call it self-respect at the moment. And when I laid down, finally, 5 hours later, after getting a new hotel, I said out loud, I don't want to live this way anymore. And that was my plea to God. And then 2 days later, the next day I flew home. And the day after that, I started a program of recovery and haven't looked back. And so I also have come to believe that God knows better than I do of what I want. It's like I'm 45 now. We talked about purpose a little bit ago. Our purpose evolves. Our purpose changes. And too many people, myself included back in the day, we equate our profession with our purpose. We think that that's our destiny, that my paycheck is who I am. And after 14 years in one place, that's how I thought too. I remember I woke up the day after I left my job of 14 years and I didn't know who I was. It was
Wow.
literally like I didn't know who I was without that place. And so, I like to joke that I'm now finally at a place where I can accept that I will not be the starting second baseman for the Boston Red Sox. When we let go of these expectations of what we think our life should be, we get to enjoy what it actually is. And I always just go back to the fact that if I got everything I ever wanted in life from like the whole time, I would be living a life that is so far different than the life I'm living now. And it's not a life that I want. Like I'm right where I need to be, doing exactly what I need to be, talking to exactly who I need to be talking to.
Yeah, well said. It is a profound journey to figure out your purpose and your why. I think that there's insights that kind of whisper to you and will reveal themselves, particularly in journaling. And if you can kind of just keep track of your notes over a long period of time, you can kind of see different like passions or things that you're interested in, and that they're, where do these thoughts come from, right? Where does this like, if you could just, if people watching this can just proclaim, oh wow, I know my purpose. I know what it's like being kind of looking for your purpose and like, what's your why? And it kind of just it whispers to you over time. And honestly, you need to write it down, and it takes just reflecting and trusting that giving up your self idea for what a purpose is and allowing maybe you to be changed to become who you need to be to actually feel the fulfillment that you deeply want or may not even know that you want yet.
So you just said so many good things in there. First part was so journaling. Yeah, when I talked about writing my book and that's how it came to me. Come on, writing a book is journaling. It was the most therapeutic thing I've ever done in my life. I recommend that to everybody should write their life story. I don't care if you think it's exciting or not. The second thing is one of the things I do with my clients when I coach individuals is I have them do a journaling exercise that starts when they're 85 years old. And I picked that out of a hat saying, final phase of your life, right? And I have them journal like, who are you? What are the things you do, see? What are the things you have? What's important to you in your life? And then I have them do it again at 65 and then at 55. We'll go to 10-year increments or 5-year increments until we're right at so for me, it would be, and then at age 50. and then next year. And the idea is that you have this vision, this broad vision of like what's important to your life, right? Now, when I look back and I go over this with them, I'm the person who points things out. So I had this one guy and he wrote like one sentence for his 55 or 65, like 10 years from now. He's like, all right, I'm going to be the super senior executive vice president of the universe at the company I worked for, and my career will be skyrocketing. But then he wrote 7 other sentences about his family and entrepreneurship. And I had to point that out to him. And I was like, bro, these 2 things don't jive. You can't do both of these here. So which one is it that you want to do? And he's like, after some conversation, we were then able to realize he wanted to be done with his corporate career at that point, not flourishing, not starting, done. So now we have something 10 years from now that we can actually start to turn into a tactical goal, something actionable that we could be like, all right, well, that means if you really want to be exiting your corporate career in 10 years, you need to start your entrepreneurship today in order to do that. Not 6, 7 years from now, thinking about what the idea might be. Like, yay, you're offering something that doesn't make any money. You don't get to leave your corporate job. So we got to start thinking about these things now. And then it becomes actionable, tangible goals. The other aspect is this, another guy that I was coaching, and same thing. He was like, 10 years from now, I'm going to be the super senior VP of the universe for, and for my industry. And I had to ask him, is that what you want or what you think you're supposed to do? And he's like,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. I'm like, all right. So, again, we fall into the traditional footsteps, right? I did. High school, went to college, got a job, like climbed the corporate ladder for a while. And then when I left to go do something else, it was like, well, all right, I guess I keep going back to work. And then you don't really know what other direction to go. People screwed us up as kids when they asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's a dumb question. They should have never asked us that. Who do you want to be when you grow up? That's the important question to ask. Who do I want to be as a human being? Because if I continue to chase a paycheck of what I want it to be, I wouldn't be on the horn with you right now. You wouldn't know who I am. I might not know who you are. I might not have been able to help that friend yesterday. I might not have been able to help somebody else, and I would have been miserable because it's not who I am. It's in conflict with the person that I am on the inside and the life that I want to live.
What are the red flags or time wasters over life that people get caught in? And, if they were aware of these, then they could accelerate faster through the stages to living like the purpose, or really living aligned with the stage that they're at, the real goal, with who they want to become.
Wallowing in inaction, waiting for the perfect moment is probably where most people waste most of their life. Mine would have been a perfect example. I wanted to do what I was doing a year before I started doing it. And a friend of mine, I remember talking to him and I was like, yeah, I want to do all this. And he's like, well, when are you going to do it? I'm like, well, I got bills. I got my house. I got this. I got cars. He's like, oh, so you want everything you want, but you don't want to sacrifice anything. He kind of called me out and I was like, yeah, that's the case. So later that year, I got the call from my job and they said, hey, we're making cuts today and you're one of them. It wasn't a perfect time to start what I'm
Wow.
doing. I wasn't capitalized for it, but oh well, this is the time. Like, what are you willing to sacrifice? You can accomplish almost anything you want in this life as long as you're willing to suffer for it. What are you willing to sacrifice? How much are you willing to endure? Once you decide that, you can go through anything. Once I realized too, my self-belief, I have an unwavering belief in my overwhelming success. And since I believe that so like strongly, notice I didn't put a time frame on it. I might have to suffer for a week. I might have to suffer for a year. I might have to go homeless. Maybe I lose everything first. I don't know. I don't know what the rest of the journey is going to be. I don't get to decide what that path takes me, but I know where I'm going and I know I'm capable of doing it. And because I'm willing to suffer, because I'm willing to endure, I know I'll get there, or at least where I'm supposed to be. Because again, the path may be illuminated differently for me.
So the elixir of unwavering belief, right? Like this sign, what is the architecture of that? Is it the result of overcoming and surviving the cancer, the diabetes? Is it something that's slowly shaped Because it sounds like did you have that unwavering belief when you left your job of 14 years to go on this new journey? Or has it kind of evolved since through more, maybe the obstacles, or if you had to define the architecture of this, how to replicate this, how does this get erected and sustained to build in a form of momentum in your life, in someone's life?
When I left that job at 14 years, I wish I could tell you that I wish I could tell you I believed and knew what I know now. Honestly, I think it was ego back then. I think I knew I could do something different. I knew I could do something else. I knew I had something else I could offer. But it was more about my sales acumen and my sales consulting and stuff like that at the time. I had gone through most of what I went through. I hadn't written the book yet though, or I hadn't published it yet anyway. I really needed these other challenges. The health issues, stuff like that. I mean, yeah, my mindset has been in constant development by going through those things and then overcoming them, but the journey doesn't end there. I had to then say, all right, I need to start over professionally. I need to take my really big salary and now have none. Like I needed to put it on the line. So, how do you acquire that though? I don't know if there's a handbook from it. And one of it is you absolutely have to go through some adversity. You have to challenge yourself. I have a friend of mine, he was like, dude, I haven't been through anything like you. I'm like, well, go fuck up your life, man. Go do something. I said, go walk around the block without shoes. Go take a cold shower. Like, turn your TV off for a month. Like, just do something hard. Like, anything that makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't always have to be life changing, but I daydream a lot. Part of that journaling exercise, one of the first things I do, right, when I go to reflect back to them, when you show me yours and I see 85 and 65, I guarantee you, if you did this, and you and I don't know each other, right? So it's like not well enough for me to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I bet if you did it too, I'm gonna look at it and be like, hey man, why are you holding yourself back like 50 years from now on a problem you're having today? Because more often than not, we don't dream big enough. We don't dream big enough. We dream as far as the limits of our current reality will allow us to. And that keeps us stuck. When you limit your beliefs, you limit your actions. When you limit your actions, you limit your results. We literally make our own life by our own beliefs. What happens, and just for a second, if we dreamed without any limitation? None. And said, I can fucking fly. Can I? Probably not. Maybe. But if I say, hey, I can jump really high, but I can't fly, well, I definitely can't fly then. When you have an unwavering belief and you just dream and dream and dream big and dream often, dream so often it becomes real in your mind. And when you see it, you can believe it. When you believe it, you can act towards it. If you can act towards it, you can achieve it. Therefore, what you believe can come true, but it has to start with a daydream. I don't really know if there's a magic formula to it. It's one of those things where I think honestly, we are so predisposed to negative thinking. We're so beaten down. And honestly, we're probably like as humans kind of preconditioned from that, right? Sense danger. Those governors protect us from taking too much risk and stuff like that. So maybe we're afraid to dream unencumbered. Maybe we're just like we're so restricted, like I talk to some people sometimes and I ask them like what their career ambitions are, and they're like, oh, I hope to get promoted to manager one day. I'm like, dude, you're 26. Like that's as far as you got. Why are you going to work? So you can make an extra $3,000 on your salary? Like that wouldn't get me out of bed in the morning. What are you going to work for? What are you trying to build? One of the first clients I had, he actually approached me and he was like, hey, I need an ass kicking for some motivation at work. And he's my age. All right. And I asked him and I was like, well, what's your motivation now? What's your why? Right. And he starts lifting off this stuff. He's like, my wife, kid, 401k, retirement, golf, whatever. And I was like, stop, stop, stop. And he's like, what? I go, stop lying. He's like, what do you mean? None of that's true. He's like, what do you mean? He gets a little pissed, right? Because his newborn kid. He's like, trying to say my kid's not my wife. I'm like, no. Because if it was, you wouldn't be on the phone with me. You wouldn't be asking for an ass kicking. I don't need anybody's help to motivate me. I'm not motivated at all. I'm purpose driven. I bitch getting out of bed every single day. All right. It's not easy. I'm not Goggins. I'm not Jocko. I'm not Cameron Haynes. I'm a regular person and it sucks. So I have to just get get through part of that, but my why transcends it. So that's the other thing, is that the why that we had isn't necessarily the thing that's going to get us there. A lot of parents, a lot of single parents too, right? It's like they get stuck. And I'm like, well, how old's your kid now? 16. Okay. They can function on their own now. So you don't have that same purpose, and you're just not realizing, or you are realizing it, because we feel the conflict. We are not immune. We're not blind to the fact that our lives are changing. Sometimes we feel that frustration on our shoulders. We feel like we should be doing something else. Have you ever sat on the couch and made an excuse for not doing something that you didn't need to make an excuse for? That's the
Yeah.
inner person. That's us inside, our internal governor saying we're supposed to be doing something and we're not, and we don't feel comfortable with it. And so we have to come up with that excuse for ourselves and we justify it to ourselves. A lot of times, by the way, that comes out in resentment, or if I see other people doing things, like if I see a buddy of mine going for 2 runs today and I'm like, oh, well, he's got all this money. He doesn't need to work as hard as me. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Why do I have to come up with excuses for something I don't want to do? Be comfortable with yourself or get your ass up and go run.
Yeah, it's like the inner judge can kind of work against us in moments, but then it's also, I think, the communication of our conscience. Our conscience is also judging: is this right for me? Is this wrong for me? When you mentioned earlier daydreaming, I think this is kind of a unique idea that maybe you're just not daydreaming enough. Do you have that as an active activity like today? Is this like a common thing, like in your day, that you take time for as you're moving through the world, that you're like, hey, let me just daydream let me just come up with something, and like, I don't know, like what do I currently believe, and what if I just 10x that?
I daydream all the time. Like, I run a good 6 to 8 hours a week, and there's nothing to do. I don't. There's nothing to do but think. And so for a while, I daydreamed mostly about races. And so there's this one event I've been chasing for a few years. It's a Spartan Race, which is an obstacle course race. It's 31 miles. It's about 18,000 feet of climbing. It's on a mountain in Killington, Vermont, and it's the
Wow.
highest DNF rate in the country out of Spartan Race. Only about 30 to 40% of the people even finish the race each year. And I'm a middle of the packer to begin with, so I'm chasing that, right? Well, every time I've been working out, pretty much every workout I've done for the better part of the last 4 years has been visualizing the end of that race, or all of that race. And I don't think I'm going to run it this year. And I've got some other goals. And to be honest, I'm now trying. And I say trying. This is where it comes with practice. I'm trying to visualize and daydream what success feels like in my business. Like, what is that fuck yeah moment that I'm going to try to get this year from a stage or from helping somebody or something? And it's weird in a business standpoint, because if I was just in sales, like working for somebody else, it would be that big commission check or something, right? But, and yes, I'm in business to make money, but that's probably not where the fuck yeah moment's going to come from, where the transformation's going to come from. And so I guess I am sort of that perfect example of the person who needs to daydream a little more, because I'm trying to think about it. And you understand, I spent 20 years in sales, almost all of it in logistics. And now I'm a speaker and I'm a coach, which I've been speaking for 20 years. I've been coaching for 20 years, but I've never been talking my story. And I've never been coaching on the stuff I'm coaching on. Well, I guess it is the same coaching, but, um, and throughout that, I lost my train of thought. How'd that happen?
No, the daydreaming, and like you're practicing that while doing all your different workouts, visualizing this like epic Spartan race that you're preparing for, and you're visualizing that over and over again.
So now that's right. It's the unknown part for me is hard. And that's why I think a lot of us get stuck, is we want to visualize some big outcome or some big thing for ourselves. Maybe we don't know how. I don't know how. I'm learning the business of what I do. And from the business standpoint, right? So I need to, I'm doing that right now. Then I'm dreaming. I'm trying to daydream while restricting myself in my current reality. That's not dreaming. That's thinking. I need to dream.
Mm.
I need to
Imagination.
dream.
You got to pull your imagination out and think of the unknown, push the boundary of the limit.
I'm so excited to be speaking at a conference, the Broker Carrier Summit in April. And what I need to be thinking about is a conference I haven't even heard of with, I don't know, 15,000 people in the audience. I need to be seeing myself in that. I need to visualize a football stadium, right? Like a football stadium watching me speak, like dream big, completely unencumbered by anything I know today. Because resilience thrives when there's a deep sense of purpose. There's a guy that I've been trying to help out a little bit, and because he wants to get physical activity back in his life, and he's so focused on like work and a lot of his tasks and stuff like that. And so I've been trying to introduce it to, I break things down to the wildly specific and stupidly simple to help people. Literally, like, hey, you want to be a runner? Go get a pair of shoes to run in. Well, what kind of shoes should I get? A pair of shoes to run in. I don't give a shit if they're Crocs. Just go put something on your feet. We're not running a marathon today. It doesn't matter. Don't overcomplicate it. Get it to the stupidest simple thing. So for him, I'm like, hey, take a 5-minute walk, right? Like it starts with a 5-minute walk, or it starts with this, or you can do 10 squats, or like right now do this. Like he hasn't done any of it, but I also realized because it's too small, he can't connect to it. He's like, what's the point of that? A lot of times people just need to build the momentum by doing the first easy steps. So instead, I was like, oh, I get it. You need a big challenge. Let's find a marathon or a 75 hard or something for you, because it is about forcing yourself in a change. We're afraid of the transformation. We're afraid of the change. And I get it. I get it. There was so many parts of myself I didn't want to let go of. When I got sober, I even was like thinking, I'm sitting myself and we're talking about personality things and character defects and behaviors. And there were some of them I even said, I was like, well, I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm like, oh, I'm still going to do this and I'm still going to do that. And it takes time to let go of who we are. We're afraid of that. But it's almost like a coming of age, right? Like when we talk about going through adversity, and I'm thinking about like things we used to read when we were in grade school. Well, when they drop you off in the wilderness for 3 days and you need to go fend yourself off from a pack of wolves and make it through all this hero's quest journey, you come out the side a different person. Like that's the whole concept, is go through the fire and come out as someone else. It's not about risk versus rewards. It's risk equals rewards. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. Get out of ourselves. Don't be afraid to let go of those old familiar parts. They simply don't serve us well anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that's journeying. Journey is moving from one destination to the other. Evolving, growing is moving from one perspective to the other. You've mentioned on this conversation the consistent action, to, like you just were providing advice, starting small, simple, and then stacking on the progress, completing the tasks, introducing impromptu daydreaming, where your actions now can rest within a larger context. This larger context can actually pull you, it can inspire you. And if you continuously try to check your dreaming, are you just thinking within the bounds of what you've listed, or what's really imagining? How do you imagine something more? You've also mentioned the mindset of good. I get to learn. So hardships on the journey are a opportunity, a spiral for you to also gain momentum. And instead of getting derailed and getting lost in a week or a month, you can actually compress that down to a day. I think the goal is not to let this simmer for days, but to get it done in hours. And if you can compress that, introducing dreaming, expand your belief system, take consistent action, be willing to suck at the beginning, you can explore with a higher power what you're meant to do, and to question if what you're doing today is really fulfilling you, and to have a clear pathway of the resistance up ahead, but knowing that if you start small, you can get really far.
Here's a thought for you too. So let's take the daydream I was talking about. All right. Here's me 5 years from now. I'm at Raymond James Stadium here in Tampa. All right. There's 35,000 people in the crowd. They're all wearing Stride Motivation t-shirts. All right. Like I've got a huge following. We got Nick Klingensmith bobblehead dolls out there, whatever. I'm like, we're blowing it up. Right. And I'm out on stage and I am just delivering the most like heart pounding, motivating, like deep seated keynote. I got tears in the audience. I'm changing lives. Like that's the dream. Right. Well,
Yeah.
but now if I didn't have that, and I say, all right, I have to make it as a professional speaker. I have to do this, right? Not for nothing. I don't think I'm performing very well on this show today. So I'm going to kick myself all day. I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to feel like an imposter. It's going to make me feel less confident about booking another show. It's going to make me question myself when I go work on my speech later today. All those things because I'm thinking so small. But now, when I have that big vision, even if this was the worst performance I've ever had, even if this was the worst conversation you've ever had, will this impact my big vision at all? This isn't the show that's going to put me on that stage, and it's not the one that's going to take me off that stage 5 years from now. So when I have that big dream, I don't need to worry about the small hiccups. In fact, I get to say, you know what? I don't think I was at my best today. I'm going to watch it and I'm going to do better next time. I'm making a making a new speaker reel, which, when you talk about blowing up, right? Like, yeah, I can't wait till I pay someone else to do all this. But right now I'm doing a new speaker reel. And so I'm using a lot of my speeches from the whole year, right? I can see the dramatic improvement from 1 to 12. Dramatic. And so if that's true, why can't it also be true that there's going to be a dramatic improvement from 12 to 24? And by the time I get on that stage, that big Raymond James, 35,000 people changing lives, they're throwing me a parade. Like by the time that Dirty Heads is playing in the background, by the time we're up there just jamming, having it all out, like the dream, all those little things along the way were just what you had to do to get there. When I finish that race in Vermont, and I will, hopefully, this year, if not next year, whenever I get to go up there next, I'll be 3 failures and 1 victory. The moment I get that buckle, when you finish an ultra, it's not a medal, it's a buckle. The very moment I finish that, you know what we call those first 3 failures? Practice rounds. That's it. The little bumps don't mean anything compared to the big picture. And that's one of the reasons it's so important. And even though like that daydream that I keep kind of talking about with the Raymond James Stadium, like, and I just made that up, the reason it's been hard for me to do is because I haven't had a similar moment. So that's where I need to take the governor off and just dream unencumbered by any sort of my current reality. I'll give you an example of something how I began working with people. Since you have a podcast, you'll understand this. One of the guys I work with, he wanted to do a podcast for like 10 years. And when I asked him about it, so we're having a coaching session, and I'm like, all right, tell me about your podcast. Well, I don't know, dude. I think it's going to be like this. It might be like that. I don't know. And he's like, okay, just shut up. Like, close your eyes. I want you to tell me you're doing your show. Where are you? Are you in a studio or are you in your house? He's like, I'm in my house. Okay. So you're doing this on the computer. He's like, yep. Do you have a co-host or is it just you? I have a co-host. Do we have guests? Well, we might not. Okay. I basically asked him all the questions that he could answer that he knew about. And then we're like, all right, so what you need to do is you just need to start recording. You just have to get your buddy on the damn air and start recording. Just talk about the show, what it want to be. I guarantee you within 3 or 4 sessions, you're all of a sudden going to have an episode. It's just going to start happening. So the wildly specific and stupidly simple action step to get started was text your friend. That's it. They just dropped
Yeah.
I think they dropped episode 15 this week.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
you understand that, like, what I think, 90% of podcasts don't make it past 10 or something like that. Like, I'm making the numbers up, but and it's just through that consistent action of taking those first steps and not being afraid to suck. Because if you wait for that perfect moment, you will never start. The things I talked about, imposter syndrome, reviewing this show later, thinking about the ways that I can improve. I have a feeling you'll probably be doing the same. Because if you're going to keep doing it, you want to keep getting better, right? And then all those other things, we're just so afraid of being wrong, of not being good at something, that it prevents us from learning new things and developing new skills. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the humility I needed to gain over the last 5 years to really be like this, because I'm not afraid to say when I suck at something. I'm not afraid to just go try something. I'm also not afraid to let my effort speak for me. There's a thing I say when I went to go do my first gig last year. I spoke to AT&T, big logo, small sales team, and on the way there, I'm like, okay, you know what? I just realized I'm kind of nervous. So right before I went out, I was like, all right, just bring the fire. Just bring the fire. Nobody is going to complain about the guy with high energy who just brought it. So I figured at the end of the day, if nothing else, my effort will speak for me. Let the effort speak for you. Efforts over outcomes, process over people. Just take the actions, keep moving forward, and we develop the skills.
Amen. Yeah. Effort's key. I mean, I think you've just unpacked so much to like the consistent starting point, how people can do anything is just getting more effort out. I'd love to ask about meditation and how do you do that? Do you like introduce that at all during your day? Do you have moments when you combine that with daydreaming? How has meditation impacted your life, and if you do it?
Meditation is actually the thing that combined all my worlds for me: mind, body, and spirit. As someone in recovery, meditation is part of that program, and I wasn't doing it. And I didn't understand. It was too hard for me, which is the dumbest thing in the world, considering it's technically the simplest thing in the world, however you want to do it. So I had to learn a way that would work for me. Some people are like, you just sit quietly. And I'm like, huh? So what I learned was box breathing. And box breathing, breathe in for 5, hold for 5, release for 5, hold for 5, repeat, repeat. And so I meditate twice a day now. I meditate 5 minutes in the morning. I get up, say a few prayers, do a 5-minute meditation, and I start my warm up. And I during that 5-minute meditation, I'll box breathe. The other time is at night. I do about 30 minutes of passive yin yoga stretching, and I'll incorporate my breathing and meditation into that as well. I actually try not to daydream at all. My intention is to turn the brain off. I don't want to do any thinking.
Mm,
I say a prayer. I, if prayer is speaking to God, meditation is listening. And
mhm.
it's like I've been asking God for guidance, and God hasn't said anything. Well, if you shut up long enough to hear it. So, but I'll tell you what, too. My my resting heart rate is 43. There are times when I'm meditating on the floor at night, and I'll get that box breathing count up to tens, and my heart rate will drop down to like 36, 37.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love it. It's like a game for me. But so I went through. I worked at this place for 14 years, and I was the seventh employee, and I helped build that company, and I was a VP of sales, and I had a great career. And then, like a lot of companies, we got private equity. We made a lot of changes, not bad changes, but just changes that weren't necessarily the same path I wanted to go. I build teams. That was my thing. And now all of a sudden we're this conglomerate. We don't have any more teams to build. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? And it was tough for me that past year, especially because, I had so much tight relationships to people who worked there. I was the CEO was in my wedding. Like, we're still good friends. It's been 6 years. And I was meditating because I didn't know what to do. And I had worked there for so long that I didn't know what it was like I was like an animal kept in captivity for too long. So I started just doing some networking of people who I used to work with, just to see what other people are doing these days. Right. And my old boss,
Mhm.
actually a guy that had fired me from the job before, uh, him and I had a conversation, and there was an opportunity to work with him and his company. And so I'm doing a prayer. I say my prayer that night, and I'm doing my meditation. And there was a moment, and it was a strange, I call it a God moment, because I had this feeling of calm come over me. And I swear it was like a light in the corner of my room. The lights were on. Okay. So I'm just feeling things. And I could see that guy, my old boss. I could just kind of see him. Didn't see him in my room. I just kind of felt him, see him. It didn't mean that I was going to take that job, but I felt that it was okay for me to go quit the one that I had. And the next morning, that's
Mm,
exactly what I did. I had knots for weeks. It's so bad. Anybody's ever been in a bad relationship, or I'm sorry, anybody's ever been in a relationship that has gone bad knows this feeling, because you shouldn't be in that anymore. You want it to go back the way that it was, but it's not. You're in turmoil, you're questioning yourself. And honestly, I was isolating, I had a bad attitude, like everything. I was just under so much stress that I was creating so much cesspool of like negative thinking for myself. And it was gone like that. And I'm like, this is the most serene feeling I've ever had. I walked in the next day, 1,000 pounds later. I walked into my boss's office, and he had some HR things going on that day. And I was like, hey, you've got too much HR stuff going on, huh? He's like, yeah. I go, well, I'm going to make one easier for you, because he knew this was in process. I had already discussed that it may be time. And I go, I've made my decision, and I'm giving my notice. He's like, oh, okay. And so the CEO came by a little bit later, and it was a tough conversation, but I was just calm and ready, man. And it did work out. And the reason I say it did work out is because here I stand. Right? Did I go make more money the next year? No. Like there's always gonna be a rebuilding. There's always gonna be
Sometimes
plus.
that's a part of working out, right? You're not supposed to make more money next year. It's supposed to be a journey that you're going on to commit to this new identity.
It's I'll be honest, when I say I didn't make more money, I actually made very good money, and that was part of the problem. You asked earlier if like when did I needed the humility of I needed the rest of the struggles the last 5 years because my career was so good to me. I think I lost a connection of what most people go through. 14 years in one job, like when I talk to 25-year-old sales reps now, they will never know what that's like to experience that. They will never have that in their career. Well, I can't say never. The market, who knows in the economy, but
Yeah,
chances
14 years is
are.
a long time with one company.
And nowadays, if you want to level up, you got to change logos. So it's a different animal. And I always appreciated what I had from that standpoint. But when you got a decade plus of making six figures plus, unfortunately, I think I lost the connection to the money. I lost a connection to where I came from. And I think that was an important part of kind of what I've had to go through the last few years of not just, and I've done all right, but it was like not just having the money there appear. You know what I mean? It's a different life when you
Mm-hmm.
don't know where your next paycheck is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, pressure is on.
Well,
But then
it's
that
not
that
the pressure, it's earlier you asked about also something about what you do during the course of the day, right? Like that's one of the most important things that has kept me focused. Again, God wants me to be happy. I believe God wants me to succeed. I pray for guidance to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And then I take all the steps that are available to me. And I'll tell you what, being afraid doesn't make my to do list. Being resentful doesn't make my to do list. I have action, 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 action. From the moment I wake up, it's wake and pray, meditate for 5 minutes, do my warm up, walk the dog, go for the run, come back, stretch. That's when I post all my videos. And it's shower, shake, office, make my list, move on to the next thing. I have a video I'm going to share on TikTok later today talks about routine and saying if you're feeling stuck, change your routine. You're the one who made the routine. All right. But some people who say they don't like routines, change your routine. That's the most efficient way to have your day is to do things like consistency is the most effective weapon in any situation. So for me, it's just how I do that. Plus, when you said, what do people do wasting their time? It would be so easy for me to sit there and just be afraid. Like, oh, I don't know what
mhm.
to do because I'm scared. When I don't know what to do, I reach out. Like, I always tell people that you should have a default activity. So when, let's say, for whatever reason, something happens tomorrow and my scheduled workout gets screwed up, I'm going to go for a 45-minute easy recovery run. That's my go-to. When I travel, I know I have that. I don't have to think about it. I can get up, do a quick warm up, and go do it. Like I always have that to make sure I get activity in. If you canceled on me for some reason this morning, I'm going to prospect. That's my go-to. Like we connected because I'm sending out introduction messages. Like, I'm introducing myself to people. Like that is my default that keeps me moving forward. I don't always know what activity is going to be the one that gets me there, but I know that taking activity will get me there. Plus, don't be so afraid of making the wrong action. How else are you going to learn what the right action is?
Yeah. And be willing to change your routine. I like that. What's your sleep schedule like? Are you a early morning riser, or how does that look?
The last couple weeks, I've been about a 10 to 5 guy. I'm going to move that to 4:30 next week. I lights out myself at 10 o'clock. I hope to fall asleep by about 10:30. Um,
Mhm.
and then I'm up till 5 o'clock today. And next week I'm moving that to 4:30. Back in the day, it used to be 4. But I work from home
Wow.
now. When I was training for the Boston, we talk about a powerful why, right? First of all, you got to understand, I am not a morning person. I meant what I said. I hate waking up. I hate it. Here's the rationale. I don't like waking up at 9 o'clock. So might as well just get up at 4 and do shit. It really doesn't make a difference. I don't like waking up. Like I like being in bed. Okay. I have that inherent laziness. So when I first ran the Boston Marathon in 2018, now I'm from Massachusetts. I've been to the marathon a dozen times. And ever since the bombing, I really, really, really wanted to run it. That was my way of saying fuck you to the bad guys. And
Mm.
this was like the holy grail of marathons for many marathon runners, many runners, and especially for me. So when I got into the Boston Marathon, the first couple of days, I'm like trying to train, waking up at like 5:30, and then I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. I need more time. And so I started waking up at 4:07 a.m. That was my wake up. That was the most effective wake up call I ever had. Don't ask me why I did the 4:07. It was just, I needed to screw with my head. 4:30, 4:15, 4, those times are like, I don't know, it was just too easy for me to be like, nope. So I had to pick something where I couldn't do math at that time of day. I couldn't, I couldn't negotiate with myself. But when I woke up, when the alarm goes off and you're like, you're kidding, right? Boston, 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 Boston. That was the only thought in my head. It's not the run I get up for, it's what I'm running for. And so having that pull and that purpose is what helped me do it. And then also, sleeping 5.5, 6 hours a night, which you gotta understand, I've never slept in my life. I grew up on Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. We had like maybe 8 or 9 weeks of life before winter came. So you've got like eight or 9 weeks to make all your money, see all your friends, get all the sun before it all turns into a ghost town. Like I grew up not sleeping. I went to college. I
Wow.
worked full time in restaurants. I had a full class schedule. I was on the volleyball team. I had a girlfriend. I slept 1 to 2 hours a night for the better part of 3.5 years, and I was barely drinking. So practice, I guess. I'm actually now trying to kind of prioritize sleep a little bit more, which is why I've been trying the 5 a.m. But I also just find, again, once you're on a consistency is your friend, and then getting up is the hard part, because then after that, I've done the hard thing. I've got the blood flowing, I've also done thinking. I've done work. I've done daydreaming. I've posted my videos. Like by the time I walk into my office, my day is on fire, not in the bad way. I'm on fire because of the day.
You've already gotten so many things done. You've stacked wins. Your brain is integrated and you're focused, and you're operating on fire. Like you're already burning hot. What are some things to perform at your absolute best when you need to? What are techniques, or how do you approach that in sports, in sales, in other ways where you absolutely have to win? What's your mindset?
Again, I go with bring the fire on a lot of things. So, I have sleep apnea too. Last night was a terrible night's sleep. Horrible night's sleep. So a few things. Number one, I'm using my standing desk right now. Set yourself up to win. If you're tired, don't be sitting down and slouching. Um, motion creates emotion. Like get the blood flow. I love moving around and actually having those types of things. So that's how we overpower the small things. Little just summon your best effort. Your best effort rarely feels good in the moment. In athletics, it's a little bit different. If I'm running or something, it really depends on the what. When I Killington, when I was doing that race this past year, again, I'm a middle of the packer. It's the hardest race in the country. All right. For me to complete that race, I had a conversation with myself and I said, you know what, Nick, if you're going to complete this race, this has to be the worst day of your life. You are going to feel worse than you have ever felt before. You're going to feel sick. You're going to feel dehydrated. You're going to feel that warmth coming up when you're working too hard and you're grinding your muscles. You might get a little faint. Your blood sugars are going to be low. You're going to be sweating. You're going to be dehydrated. Like you are going to hate this. I had to mentally prepare myself that I was going into hell. And so when I'm out there that day, and I mean, everything was going wrong too. And I am just grinding, right? But I mentally prepared myself for the grind. And I wasn't like, make it stop. I was like, let's go. Like, I was in it. I'll be honest. I DNF'd that race this time. I was 18 minutes ahead of my pace, which is a lot for what I was doing. And I was about to hit a big downhill. So I would have been a good 30 minutes above my pace going into the end of the first lap. So a lot of things can happen. But I got wicked bad cramps, wicked bad cramps. They've been hitting me the whole time. It was 80 freaking degrees in Vermont in September when it should have been 50. So I was like crazy dehydrated. And I'm at mile 10, 5,000 feet of climbing, 25 obstacles. I hadn't failed any of them. I am on fucking fire. Like I'm loving this. Okay. I'm loving the suffering. I'm loving it too. Cause I'm like, this is it. Like I am good. How good I'm going to feel at the end of this. Right. my cramps seized up, man, and I just couldn't move. I couldn't move. I'm standing at an obstacle and I'm like kind of writhing around trying to get the like to shake out. And I just, even if I was somehow able to get past the cramps, I would have never been able to make the cutoffs at that point. And so ultimately, I had to hitch a ride and DNF. And as much as I hated the result, there's nothing, when I look back at those 4 hours I was out there, there's nothing that I look back and say, I would have done something different, and that's where you talk about leaving it out there. So I don't have a lot of like, I tell myself to bring the fire, but I don't need to tell myself to lean into the suffering for work related stuff. Although to put it on a smaller scale, has anybody ever had to go to a meeting they don't want to, right? A tough meeting. Maybe you're going to get some bad news delivered to you. Maybe you're going to hear some bad news and you don't want to react to it. Things like that. Well, you prepare the same way. I haven't had to interview in a minute, but when I do, I box breathe for 5 minutes first. If I have a tough call, if let's say got to call the insurance company about something, I'll meditate for 5 minutes. I'm just trying to put myself in that calm and relaxed and less reactive state. Maybe, just maybe, I think clearer. Maybe, just maybe, I make more decisive decisions and it's not just a reaction to what's going on around me. So, I mean, there are things that I can put into play to, I guess we want to mitigate the fight or flight response from our lives.
Like fighting is that tension energy. It's almost like the hardening, and then you have the other side of performance where you want to be really relaxed. And I think there's like kind of a balance where you're saying, hey, I'm using my standing desk, right? I want to be like not tired and slouch. I want to be like be attack ready. I want to be focused, right, in my full frame, grounded. Grounded is a unique word of like you're not tense and too much rigidness, right? There's a little bit of a flow in your energy to be able to kind of project either in communication or in some type of sport activity. But you don't want to be too lazy. You don't want to be like, I don't know, too relaxed. I do notice while playing pickleball, some of the best players, they move with a very like nonchalant briefness. Like they're very subtle. It's almost like a poise. And this poise, what I've noticed is it's almost like it's a subtle communication of just being very grounded and relaxed, but also incredibly like capable at the same time.
I am a head case, and I used to play competitive beach volleyball, and that's actually what brought me to Florida. And even back in the day, I was a little more aggressive of a person, I guess. And but also I talk trash like crazy, like it was my job. And with with volleyball, if I didn't like the people I was playing against and I had to beat them, I would play terribly. When I was just in a good mood and just having fun, like we would we would just dominate. I actually remember being down here in Florida once, and this is years ago. We're talking almost 20 years ago now. It was during the 2008 Summer Olympics, and so it was raining here in Florida. So that morning, I was out playing ball with a bunch of people, and the rain came. So I went into the bar, and it rained for a couple hours. So I was pretty drunk by the time my game came up, and so was my buddy. And they called us out there, and we played a guy named Matt Henderson and Justin Phipps, who are two of the best players in Florida. They're both competitive on the AVP, the professional circuit. We took them to 18
Mm-hmm.
points. They were so mad. Like I'm
Wow.
not their level at all. Like I'm 3 steps
So you're
ahead
like
of a barbecue.
overtiming, you're game pointing over and over again, all the way up to 18.
Yeah, they're just like, and they're, Justin Phipps gets up and he goes, pounds that ball at me, and I'm like, poop, like, like just all loosey goosey. Because number one, we had no expectations or demands. We were drunk, a little bit drunk, just having fun, and because of that lack of rigidness. But anytime I'm like, I have to win this game, I'm gonna lose. It's
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, I went and did the Spartan Race, the Beast, which is a half marathon distance, about 25, 30 obstacles in Central Florida, middle of nowhere land that time forgot Florida. And I was injured. So I've been dealing with something called golfer's elbow, which, if you don't know what that is, let's just call it triple homicide elbow because it's awful. And So I didn't run the competitive division that day. I decided to drop down to the open division because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do all the obstacles or even follow all the rules. Because if this thing really triggered, I wasn't going to be able to grip, push, touch anything. So I
Hmm.
dropped back to the open, and without any pressure on myself, I went flawless on the obstacles. I didn't fail anything. But I think if I had been in the competitive environment, all stiff and rigid and just thinking of like I have to win, I don't know, I get in my own way that way. So for me, it's about clearing the path to be my best isn't it's just letting go. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, clearing the path, right? I think we can perform at our best sometimes when we get out of our head, when we're playing above our head. We're not trying to have so much ownership of the result. It's when you really feel like I'm doing this. Oh my gosh, you could just fall or crack. And it's like, I don't know, you take too much credit maybe for the intelligence that is operating when you're really relaxed and kind of just trusting the moment.
You want to get in that flow state. You hear about flow state. Plus, I mean, you talk about pickleball and some of the guys. I see people out there runners. It just looks like they're floating, and I'm over here and I'm making it look like every step is the hardest step ever taken. Like I want to be like that.
Yeah. Just going with the flow. Awesome. Well,
Exactly.
Nick, and you think about the journey and you think about everything we talked about, if you had to summarize or like kind of maybe give like a leaving point that crystallizes, your intention and what you shared, how does that come through?
If I could encourage people to do anything, it would be to abandon the victim mindset. And the way that we do this is by personal responsibility, taking responsibility for everything in our lives. Not blame, not fault. I am responsible. I'm starting today with a clean slate. All right. Yesterday doesn't matter. Tomorrow hasn't happened yet. I am responsible for everything in my hula hoop, which means there's no blame, no excuses, no fear. I am responsible for taking these next moves. Because of this, you do not have to be a survivor. That is how we thrive. Let this be the time that we abandon the victim mindset, that we abandon these limiting beliefs that we continue to create for ourselves, that we abandon excuses. We say, fuck it. This is my year to thrive. That's what I want to leave people with.
Amen. That's awesome. Nick, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.